the plumbing the plumbing code will be amended that all gender multi-user facilities are permissible. There's no requirement for them, but as you know, the present plumbing code, they are not permissible because they require separate sex facilities, and you'd have to address it through alternate means. DSA doesn't really go through an alternate means process. However, a local jurisdiction does. So this not only affects our school facilities, but also affects local jurisdictions. Okay, Cal Green, and we have EV charging. That was approved April 1st, 2023 at the commission meeting. So also affect July 1st, 2024. And this requires, what we've added to EV charging is a charging power alternative, which allows you to aggregate your power and determine how you want to use that power for electric vehicle charging. So that is an alternative that's provided as an alternative to what was already in the code for EV charging. And then of course, CO2 monitoring, if under your modernizations, CO2 monitors will be required in an existing K-12 classroom when a building is modernized. And that again is July 1st, 2024. Our approved carbon reduction regulations are mandatory measures for 50,000 square feet and greater for K-12 schools and community colleges. There's 3 paths to comply. Building reuse, maintain 45% of the existing structure and enclosure. Whole building life cycle analysis, which demonstrates a 10% reduction in global warming potential compared to a baseline building. And then of course, there's a direct prescriptive path that can be demonstrated with environmental product declarations for 5 products. This is also a requirement for non-residential construction in the state at 100,000 square feet to begin, and then it goes to 50 January 1st, 2026. So this is very exciting. We're the first state in the nation to start to address embodied carbon measures. This is a very, very, very modest proposal for buildings of this size. Most design professionals can address and meet these requirements for little to no cost. And this also does not affect construction costs because these products are readily available. So our proposal was modest so that we could get it into the code. And then of course, as we advance and more products come online, we can address the requirements by lowering thresholds and adding more products to the process. But this is very exciting for addressing climate action and getting in the code. We're the first state in the nation to have it in our code, which is a big plus. Existing buildings task force is scheduled to resume this fall. Kind of aligns with what we were talking about in the embodied carbon regs and retaining our buildings when we can. And obviously we want to make sure they're safe. And our staff is working on white paper alternatives, but Diane has assured me that probably in September or early October, we'll be meeting again to discuss these white paper approaches. So more information on that. Our Sustainable Schools Showcase, we're a little late on our quarterly one this quarter, but we do have an archive of them. There is a mix in there between K-12 schools and community colleges. And so our next one, I believe, hopefully will be coming out in September. And then, of course, subscribe to our listserv to get all our information. And that is it, Alan. If I will take questions.
Great. Thank you, Ida. We did have one question that came in from Dave Mack and asked the question, are you planning on opening an office in Central California, specifically Fresno?
You know, Dave, we are not. I will say that I think they had tried to do that in the past and it wasn't sustainable, and I wasn't here, so it's been a long time ago. I will say that most of our work is electronic, including pre-application meetings. The only time you're really required to come into a DSA office is at back check time, but that's even at phase 2 back check, which means for your projects, if you can get them cleared at phase 1 back check, which is a desk back check, then you don't need to come into the office for a phase 2. So we've taken all that into consideration in facilitating getting into our offices. We've learned that from the pandemic, and obviously so have everyone else with this ubiquitous use of Zoom. We use Teams specifically. So we do encourage you to reach out at any time in your project. However, if you want to appear in person, you would need to travel to one of our offices. And then, of course, the only other time that's required is a phase 2 back check to close out the project, which hopefully doesn't occur that often. So
Great.
hope that answered your question.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you, Ida, for the presentation. So we'll move on in our presentation. Next slide, please. So OPSC, I know we had Michael Watanabe on schedule. I don't see him here yet. I did want to take a minute and recognize and congratulate Michael. I believe he recently took over the position as Deputy Executive Officer for OPSC. This was a position that Barbara Campanert left, I believe, earlier in the year. So we want to congratulate Michael, and we look forward to continuing the great work that we've done with Michael over the years. But we will move on, and unfortunately, he wasn't able to be with us today. So let's go into the next step. So I am now going to hand it off to Nancy Chárez Espinoza to talk a little bit about legislative and regulatory issues. And there you are, Nancy. So I'll go ahead and hand it off. You can take it from here.
Thank you, Alan. It's good to be with you all. We've got a lot of updates. There's a lot going on in legislative and regulatory world. I'll begin just by setting the stage a little bit. The legislature came back from its summer recess last week on Monday, August 14th. All of the surviving bills are in their appropriations committee in the second house right now, and that includes both of the bond bills that we are watching. The fiscal deadline, which is the deadline for the appropriations committees to finish their work, is coming up next Friday. So we expect those hearings midweek, mid to late next week. All of the bills need to be approved by that committee or become 2-year bills by September 1st, or they are effectively dead. I say effectively because, you know, all sorts of creative things happen if you're the right person and you can pull the right lever. So sometimes we do see some bills resurrected. In fact, one of the ones that Ian's going to talk to you about had that happen to it. The end of the 2-year session, which is not what we're in now. We're in the middle of a 2-year session. The end date is in the Constitution and can't be waived, but we're in the middle. So the end of the first year is in joint rules, which technically they could say, well, we need to stretch it one more day and finish on Friday instead of Saturday. But we don't generally see that. So it's probable that they will finish on September 14th, which is the last day to pass bills in the session before they go into their interim study recess, which is the break between the first and the second year. All statutes, all of those bills that do make it and are signed into law by the governor will become effective on January 1st of 2024, unless they have a different effective date that's specified in the bill. So I'm going to mention one bill, and then I'm going to pass it off to my colleagues to give you some more highlights. AB 579 by Mr. Ting is a bill on which Cash does not have an official position because it's primarily a transportation bill, but it definitely has a facilities nexus. This bill would require by January 1, 2035, that all new new school bus purchases be electric vehicles for school districts, county offices, charter schools. It does say where feasible, and I'll get into the details. So if that doesn't work for you, if that's not feasible because of terrain or route constraints, you can apply for a one-time extension for a term not to exceed 5 years. If you can show that you have terrain or route constraints and the technology does not exist to meet your needs. After that 5-year period, beginning in 2040, if you are what is defined as a frontier school district, which there's an established threshold for low population density and a cap of 600 students enrolled in your school district, you can apply for a series of 1-year extensions for up to 5 years if you can still demonstrate that there are terrain and route constraints. So interestingly, 1/3 of the buses owned by school districts, they're not all owned, right? But of those that we own are already EV. So we've made a lot of progress in this area, but there's a broad coalition of education advocates who are opposed to this bill because essentially what it does is that it imposes the mandate before the technology exists, right? We don't know that these problems that we're facing are going to be resolved in the next 10 or 15 years. So that's one of the primary concerns, funding, of course, being the other. So I wanted to keep that on your radar, definitely something important to watch, and we will continue to remain in that conversation. And with that, I'm going to hand it over. Rebecca, let's go to Rebecca next, and you'll start to hear about some of these shenanigans I'm talking about that happen in the end of session.
Hi, everyone. So just a quick update on where we are with our state school bond. So AB 247, we are waiting to see what happens with that in Appropriations Committee, right? So we're hoping to see that bill pass off the suspense file and continue moving through the process. Certainly the conversation and the movement will depend on whether or not legislative leadership and the administration decide we're aiming for a November 2024 or a March 2024. If it is November, we may see that bill move out of the Appropriations Committee, but kind of hang out in the Senate on the floor. In Rules Committee or on the inactive file while further negotiations and development take place. So we're waiting to hopefully see that by that September 1st deadline to act by fiscal committees. If it is March, then we're hopefully going to see a bill move through the legislature and come out ready for the governor to sign by September 14th. So stay tuned. The next couple of weeks are going to be critical. One thing that I want to mention is just a quick update on polling. So you all know that Cash is very involved in opinion research and checking where voters are to make sure that we're developing a viable bond and that we're prepared for a successful campaign. Successful campaign is really the key here, right? And our latest round of polling that was conducted at the end of June does show an improvement from March. So things are trending in the right direction. We feel very pleased and confident with the results that we're seeing from that process. It's critical that we have a viable state school bond in 2024, right? We do not want to test some things and maybe see if they work. We really need to have a strong, viable measure, and that's where polling comes in. Our polling is demonstrating that we absolutely can and will win, but we need to have a strong campaign. And so when you see those opportunities to help support the work that Cash is doing on the campaign, whether it be telling your story about the needs in your school district or, ponying up and supporting one of those fundraisers if you're one of our associate friends. Please, 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 that's absolutely critical to our success. We are also seeing in our polling that voters are pretty consistent in understanding the vital importance of our core program details. These are things like ensuring health and safety, doing vital repairs, and providing workforce training opportunities with our CTE program. So those are the things that really are resonating with voters, which has been consistent over the many years that we've been doing this work. So thank you so much for your support on this. And we're really excited to keep you updated in the next couple of weeks on the development of that state school bond. I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk about an issue that is before the State Allocation Board tonight. This is the issue related to the construction cost index increase and the Cash litigation on this issue. So if you recall, there were a number of projects that had been submitted back in 2012. So we're now looking more than a decade back. That were submitted in 2012, and they went on the old version of the unfunded list. So that was a list where projects were processed and recognized by the State Allocation Board. This was a batch of projects that were outside of existing bond authority. So subsequent to the submittal of these projects, the process was changed. that there was the creation of the acknowledged list where projects outside bond authority are accepted, but are not processed and are not sent to the board for approval pending future funds. So it's that batch of projects that got caught in the middle on that policy change. It's 129 projects worth $368 million. When Prop 51 was passed and the state allocation board took action to fund projects that had previously come before them, they did not apply the construction cost index increase to this batch of projects. And so Cash did challenge that. And we filed a lawsuit that said, and it was really about program integrity, right? This is a core tenet to our program, is to ensure that projects are funded at the appropriate amounts. We did prevail in the trial court on one particular point, and that's that when the board made that action and took that step, they failed to explain the reasoning for not adjusting the apportionments to the 2017 grant amounts when those apportionments are made. Now, through the legal process, the appellate court did ultimately say, well, State Allocation Board, why don't you place this matter on a future agenda, reconsider your decision, and either affirm or modify that decision. So today, this afternoon, that is the reaffirmation and the reconsideration of that decision. The State Allocation Board is going to hear a supplemental report that does recommend upholding that prior decision that was made in 2017. Staff is recommending just to adopt that report and that no CCI adjustment would be applied to those projects. I know we talked to you previously about getting engaged in this process, telling your story to the State Allocation Board members, talking about how important the funds are to your students, your communities. And I do want to thank 14 school districts for submitting comments in this process, where we had the option and the opportunity to provide public comment in this process. So thank you so much for doing that. We hope to see folks this afternoon at the State Allocation Board talking about how this action affects their schools and their communities, and stay tuned for more information. But we really do want to thank you all for engaging in the process and really helping to put faces, communities, students, schools to these things that seem like ministerial actions. So thank you very much. And with that, I will pass the talking stick on to my colleague Ian, who's going to tell you about really the juicy bills that we've been working on in Sacramento. It's in Ian's court, and it's an exciting and fun time to be working on legislation on your behalf here in Sacramento. So thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca and Nancy. Great updates. So yes, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some bills that Cash is focusing on as in the final weeks really of this legislative session. So these are the ones that survived. As you know, Cash tracks 50, 100 bills as they're first introduced, but as they make changes and so on, we go forward and we see and we're close to the finish line now. So we're putting a lot of work into these bills. So one of them, everyone knows as Cash members how much interest and policy energy has went into air quality, HVAC upgrades, all those pieces, and that interest and is still there. But of course, water quality continues. School water quality continues to be a significant area of concern with some folks, and also a significant policy issue in the legislature. So there is legislation this year following up on legislation last year aimed at school water quality. The bill is AB 249 by Mr. Holden. And basically, without getting into the technicalities, it would reduce the trigger for required testing from 15 parts per billion, kind of the industry standard, from the EPA for 10, 15 years, something like that, to 5 parts per billion. That's a notable piece because that's the child care standard already. There was AB 2370 was approved a few years ago, and it lowered that. And this bill is essentially based on that conceptual framework. So the other piece, in addition to reducing down to 5%, is that all potable water outlets would be required to be tested. Now, that's something different than you've done under AB 746, which is a sampling of them, kind of acknowledging that it would be a lot of work and expense to do that. Well, this bill would require testing of all the outlets. So this would apply to all Title I schools. It was as introduced to all schools, then it was reduced down to Title I schools, but really that's nearly still 8,000 schools. So it's a little bit of movement, but really not enough. It's still a lot of schools. And it would need to be done by January 1st, 2027. So of course, Cash has been working with others, AXA, CASBO, Riverside County Office, others to oppose the bill. We don't have an official letter, but we've been letting folks know the cost impact and how difficult it would be, and then maybe it would be better to start with where we are and expand that program, and an approach like that. So we'll see what happens in the next 2 weeks with this. But what we hope will be is that we can continue to work on the issue, but that it will be held in the legislature so we can talk about this issue more. So put a red pin in that one. Water quality is still a significant area of concern. Remember, it's been talked about also in the AB 247 bond discussion. There was funding available, we believe, with some of the new federal programs. So water quality in schools continues to be a significant issue. Last piece I'll say about this, even if there wasn't this bill, federal requirements that are in rulemaking now will essentially require what this bill proposes, the 5% testing all outlets and other pieces. So this is an issue, whatever happens to this bill, to keep a very close eye on going forward in terms of program and funding sources. So the next bill, the other bill, is SB 499. And that is aimed at this very popular policy program, both in the legislature as well as in the media. And that's mitigating the effects of extreme heat in a school context, at a school campus, right? There's a lot of discussion about that. We understand, right? We know a lot of folks with children know what it's like to be out on the blacktop. We know what it's like, the heat island effect and so on, but we want to make sure that new regulations don't come top down and aren't funded. And so that's some of our issue with this bill. Basically, it would require two things. It would require the creation of an extreme heat action plan based on something that the Department of Education would develop, a template, something like that. That in itself might be one thing. But it also prohibits the use of what they call high heat surfaces, which is basically everything that you do now. Cement, asphalt. When you replace it, you would have to replace it with what they would call a low heat source or a greener option, something like that more. So in some ways, this is kind of a landscaping bill. But the fiscal costs are very, very significant. So Cash is opposed to this bill. As well as other of our fellow coalition members, AXA, CASBO, others. We hope, again, like this will be hopefully held in committee so we can have a longer discussion about what's the appropriate way, what parts can schools play in helping to mitigate high heat as it rises, but also making sure that the burden and the liability doesn't just get placed at the footstep of schools. So those are two significant bills and two significant issues that you see not only in the legislature, but in other places you'll see in Cash going forward. And you'll hear more about that from us and at the fall conference and going forward. Two pieces, because I know we're running out of time. I want to just flag for you the stormwater permit, the MS4. Some of you actually know what that is now. The preliminary draft language includes K-14 schools and is a very comprehensive, very complicated permit scheme at this point with no funding. You probably hear me say that once in a while. So we are very concerned about that. The Cash Environmental Committee, I'll be working with our own group to work with the Cash Board and other important stakeholders here to basically push back, let folks know what are we doing already that can be, what are your goals? What can we do already that qualifies for that, because just the top-down approach that they suggest is expensive and will be very difficult. It will be multiple billions of dollars of cost impact just for schools. So just wanted to let you know we're working on that. Also, and with a little bit of good news, Ms. Ida Claire mentioned the CalShape program, and there are some changes. There's a round 5. The significant piece here is that for the first time, it allows for upgrade and repair. The funding to be used by that. There's some limitations I'll tell you about, but if you remember before, it was essentially assessment and maintenance. And so it was a good program if you needed to do that, but it wouldn't allow you maybe to upgrade some of the issues that you identified on your assessment. Well, now with some limitations, the same ones as before, it will allow you to do that. $253 million available for that. So it won't solve all problems, but it's a good source of funding at the state level for those that qualify. Again, some of the big pieces of you need to qualify for is you have to be in the right utility service area. It's a technicality that is related to the source of this funding, and also qualify as an underserved community. And so if you can meet those hoops, you will be able to do both an assessments still as well as upgrade and repair. One big piece is though, to get this upgrade and repair, you will already have to have done an assessment and maintenance. And so take a look at that. That will eliminate some folks. But again, there is funding available for the assessment and maintenance piece as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Alan and say thank you. And of course, I'm always here and we're always here for questions on these issues going forward. So thanks, Alan.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Ian. I think Rebecca had wanted to address a question that came into the question about AB 1699.
Thanks, Alan. We'll pull that up and take a closer look, but typically cash does not take positions on operational bills. This one is related to labor issues, staffing, that type of thing, unless there's an immediate and direct effect on kind of our core priorities. So we'll take a look at it, but right now cash does not have a position on AB 1699. I do know that many of the other education organizations are opposing that bill, but you know, we typically sort of stay in our facilities lane, but we'll take a closer look at it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that's important to reiterate. You know, CASH's focus is on adequate school facilities, and so we try to stay in our lane in the host of legislation that's submitted each year that runs the gamut of everything that's important to our state. We really try to focus our energies and our resources on those topics that really address school facilities. So thank you for that, Rebecca, Nancy, and Ian, for the great report. So I think we will move on now, and I think we're moving to our energy report. And I think Nancy would come back up to talk to us a little bit. So if we can go next slide. And School Energy Coalition. So Nancy, take it away.
Thank you, Alan. So a couple of big things going on in the energy world. First, the California Air Resources Board approved its is in the process of approving its advanced clean fleets regulation, which would impose successive mandates starting next year to convert vehicle fleets to electric. It contains an exemption for buses, but the wording of that exemption is unclear because it points to a statutory definition of buses that relies both on the physical characteristics of buses and the usage. So it could create a situation where what is deemed a bus in one school district, an identical vehicle would not be deemed a bus in another district. And obviously that's not an environment in which we want to operate, right? There are even potential penalties for non-compliance. So we really need these rules to be very clear. SEC has requested clarification along those lines and pointed out where the statutory definition actually seems to conflict with some of the other guidance that CARB has put out about this regulation. So we are working on that. Another big regulatory issue for us is the California Public Utilities Commission's NEMA proceeding, Net Energy Metering Aggregated. The aggregated refers to the fact that many utility customers or users like schools have to have multiple meters on their property. The program was really created with agricultural users in mind, and the utilities really portray this program as somehow being an effort to game the system by using multiple meters, but there are some very legitimate reasons that schools have to have multiple meters. And NEMA is one of the ways that we were able to make our solar pencil out by netting the energy and just, it's complicated. I won't get into it. So the proposed decision that is out now, that is currently under consideration, it could be adopted as soon as September, would make it very hard to finance the installation of our solar generation equipment by relying on either future savings or a revenue stream from selling that energy back to the grid. The reason for that is because the proposed decision would essentially require a school district with any kind of solar generation equipment to sell back 100% of its energy, to sell it to the utility at a very low rate, and then to buy back at the high retail rate what it actually uses. It is very much like your local grocery store charging you for the vegetables that you grow in your own backyard. And as shocking as that might sound, this is actually a model that the utilities have been very successful at implementing from Puerto Rico to the Eastern US, all across the United States. And it looks like California is poised, unfortunately, to join that list. But SEC is doing all it can to continue to educate regulators about what a disincentive that they would be creating to adopt the technologies that we need in order to adapt to climate change. So it's unfortunate, but we are continuing to do everything we can to educate folks. And that is all that I have, Alan.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Nancy. Yeah, it's somewhat of an interesting time in the, I'll say, competing or not in alignment regulations that are happening out there. I will note that DSA just yesterday released a new IR related to on-site battery storage and requirements, and making it, at least putting more regulation and requirements into that on-site storage so that we could help to mitigate some of those changes in the NEM program. So it's an interesting time, and a lot of great work is happening on some of our regulators, Nancy and her team, to make sure that we keep all of our membership informed of the latest changes that are happening. So thank you. Okay, next topic, Cash Federal Network. So calling Ian back up to give us a quick update on the happenings with the Cash Federal Network.
Thank you very much, Alan. Yeah, appreciate it. Just a little time to talk about this. Still, the big issue is that this is under the cash umbrella now. As you know, California's for School Facilities has for over 20 years done really good work and has had a lot of success in terms of bringing resources out to California. The QZAP program, others you all are well aware of that. So we're in the process of summarizing those things, retain our existing members, but looking towards the future, with these federal programs, there's so many programs, we all get a little bit overwhelmed with them, but the Inflation Relief Act, others, there's hundreds of billions, trillions overall available. It's hard to kind of sort through it. That's kind of why we have this federal network, and we're in the process of course, of doing that. So pivoting to those, and we've talked about some concrete issues here already. What funding and programs are available for water quality, for HVAC, for energy? We've talked about that. We know there's a big focus on energy, storage, solar, all the things that you've heard all the advocates talk about just now. Those are some of the things. There's opportunity out there, and so we're in the process of learning more about those. The bill was over 1,000 pages, and so it's still being implemented. It fits and starts, but it's important. There's a lot of pieces, and that's really what the real focus of this federal network will be. So it won't only be advocacy, of course, but as we know more and there's more tangible, we'll certainly do more information distribution, as well as trainings and workshops and so on, when we have tangible things with a lot of funding for, say, upgrading water quality systems, something like that. So keep an eye on it. And but the federal Cash Federal Work Network, very, very active right now. And take a look for us. We'll be meeting at the fall conference, so come and see us. Thanks, Alan.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ian. Yeah, this is really an evolving area. This is really your cash association at work, and really refocusing the work that we're doing at the Washington DC level to really ensure that the work that our federal legislators do really is targeted towards what we need here in California. And I think that this is really great work, and this is our attempt to kind of refocus that and reinvigorate that work as we move forward. So for those of you out there that are interested in becoming a part of this Cash Federal Network, please jump on our Cash website and take a look. There's ample opportunities as we move forward with the Inflation Recovery Act Inflation Reduction Act and other federal monies out there. So this is an evolving area that we're going to be putting a lot of emphasis in over the next several years. So thank you, Ian, and thank you the team that's working on this for us. Okay, we will move into the next slide, if we would. I'll call up our Vice Chair, Mr. Tom Pace, to talk a little bit about the annual conference.
Morning, afternoon. I think we're right at that switching hour. Afternoon, everyone. Just want to bring your attention to the fact that our annual conference is February 28th to March 1st. We're looking forward to having greater topics in the maintenance and operations world, greater focus on professional development, and I think it will be one of the better conferences we've had, and looking forward to spending some time in Sacramento. I did want to take just a quick minute to thank Cal OES, County Offices of Education, ESA and Ancillary. I love the great state of California and the response that we give that are people in need, and to my own family in Maui. Hearts and prayers to you, and hope for a speedy recovery to family. So thank you very much, and that is my update.
Great. So yeah, annual conference is coming up. There'll be more information coming up at the fall conference in October as we begin to put more information out for being able to register for this and sponsorship, support, endorsements. I mean, the whole gamut will be available for our fall conference in October. So we look forward to seeing everybody in Sacramento in February of 2024. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, the team that's been working on this, for the great work to make this, as we always say, the best conference ever.
You set a high bar last year, Alan, so we're working hard to ensure that we surpass that.
Great. Thank you, team. So let's move on. We're closing up our presentation for today. So take a minute to take a plug for our job exchange and our People's Choice. Great opportunity for cash memberships to be able to post those job opportunities that your firm or your district may have. Definitely a great opportunity to get your solicitation out to multiple different eyeballs across our organization. Take advantage of that. And for your RFPs, if you're looking to solicit firms that want to propose in your district, you want to get your projects out there to get some people looking at that and get some firms to solicit or to propose on your RFPs, please take advantage of that job exchange and People's Choice that's available to you as a member. So take a look at that, and there's information on our Cash website for how you submit those opportunities and get those out to all of your membership so that you can get the best individuals on your projects. So with that, we will move to the next. Just a reminder, we've reached the end of our presentation today. The next Cash Day will be on Wednesday, September the 27th, again from 11 till about 12:15. Mark your calendars and make sure that you're there. It'll be a great opportunity to meet with many of our state partners and our cash lobbyists for the work that's happening up and down the state and the new rules and requirements. I also want to take this opportunity to plug today will be the state allocations board meeting at 4 o'clock. There's opportunities to attend via Zoom. You can find that information on the OPSC website. Again, we mentioned it earlier, a very important topic for schools, school facilities up and down the state as the board addresses this application of the construction cost index. There's opportunity if you have an opinion about that you can sign up to speak electronically. They both take Zoom and in-person comments. So we do want to recommend that if you have an opinion about this, let the state allocations board knows. We really need to have a really good showing today to show our state allocations board members that we're out here, we're listening, and this is important to us. So with that, we've reached the end of our presentation. I want to thank all of our presenters today. I want to thank all of the folks that work behind the scenes to bring this on for you today. And I want to thank you as attendees and members of our association for being here today and taking part of this. So thank you very much. We'll reach the end of our presentation. Everybody stay safe and have a great rest of your day.